Welcome to the weekly FreelanceBar podcast, and welcome to the deep dive.
You got it.
I'm Scott.
I'm Sarah.
And we are ready to kind of go through and explore some of the biggest, shifts happening across the tech and business world from this past week.
Yeah, this week was a big one.
It was a really big one.
Lots of stuff going on.
So we've gone through all the information, we've sifted through everything, we've read all the things, and we've pulled out what we think really matters for you. And yeah, we're ready to just dive in.
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. So let's start with this this whole kind of tug of war, I guess you could say, with AI data scraping.
Yeah.
You know, we've got Cloudflare.
Cloudflare, yeah.
Just rolled out this new tool called AI Labyrinth.
I love that name.
It's a cool name, right?
AI Labyrinth, very cool.
So now instead of just blocking bots like they've done in the past, they're kind of leading them down this digital rabbit hole of like fake AI generated pages.
It's really interesting.
So what is the thinking behind this?
I think what Cloudflare is doing is really interesting because they're moving from like a purely defensive posture to a more active deception kind of posture.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like instead of just putting up walls that bots can climb over, the sophisticated bots these days can climb over any wall you put up.
Yep.
They're creating a mirage.
Yeah.
And so it's like leading them on this wild goose chase through all this fake data.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
Yeah, so it's not just about wasting their time, which I'm sure is a nice bonus.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But the real value here seems to be observing how these bots navigate this fake data.
Right.
And then being able to identify, you know, where they're coming from, what their tactics are.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, website admins can just flip a switch in their dashboard with Cloudflare and enable this, right?
Exactly. So it's a really easy integration for anybody who's using Cloudflare.
Cool.
Which a lot of websites are. So I think it's a really interesting development in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think this is really showcasing this whole kind of arms race that's happening, right?
Yeah.
Between the people who want to collect data and the people who want to protect it.
Absolutely.
And AI is playing such a huge role on both sides.
On both sides, for sure.
All right, let's move on to something completely different.
Okay.
This was a bold move. Perplexity, the AI search engine company, has made a bid to acquire TikTok.
Wow.
That raised my eyebrows a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, why would an AI search company want to jump into short form video?
It's really interesting because I think what Perplexity is trying to do here is really fundamentally reshape how social media operates. And I think they're looking at it from the perspective of content discovery and personalization.
Yeah.
You know, because they're an AI search engine company.
Right.
So they're really good at, you know, taking your queries and finding the information you need.
Yeah.
So I think they're looking at TikTok and saying, hey, we can apply that same technology here.
Yeah.
And we can make it so that you're seeing the content that you want to see.
Yeah.
And so their key aims here are rebuilding the algorithm in American data centers and open sourcing the recommendation system, which I think is really interesting.
Huge.
Yeah, because they're basically saying, you know, we want to be transparent about how this is working.
Yeah.
We want you to be able to see the code.
Yeah.
We want you to understand how these recommendations are being made.
Yeah. And I think that's such a big deal because we've had so many concerns about the black box nature of these algorithms, right?
Absolutely.
Where it's like, you know, they're feeding us stuff and we don't know why.
Yeah.
And it feels manipulative in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think
that's a really smart move on their part.
Yeah, and they're clearly trying to position themselves as a different type of player than like the ByteDance, you know, folk.
Exactly, and
who people are kind of suspicious of.
Yeah, people are a little wary of that.
Yeah, and I think they're hoping that this kind of open source approach will rebuild trust.
I think so.
In social media.
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible?
I think it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
You know, because it's, like you said, it's taking away that black box element.
Right.
And it's saying, hey, we're not trying to hide anything.
Right.
This is how it works.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Yeah.
And so I think that could definitely lead to more trust from users.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about the media landscape.
Yeah.
TechCrunch has been sold again.
Has been sold again.
This time by Yahoo to a private equity firm called Regent.
Wow.
This feels like just another chapter in the, you know, ongoing saga of online tech journalism.
Yeah.
What stood out to you about this?
I think The most interesting thing here is the stated reason for the sale, which was a fundamental difference in vision.
Mm.
And that quote came from Connie Luizos, who's TechCrunch's editor-in-chief.
Right.
And I think that really suggests that Yahoo had one idea for where they wanted TechCrunch to go.
Yeah.
And TechCrunch had a different idea.
Yeah.
And so they just decided to part ways.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, too, because
yeah.
this isn't the first time TechCrunch has changed hands.
Right. We've seen Verizon.
Yeah, we've seen Verizon.
Yeah.
We've seen Apollo Global Management.
Yep. Yep. And it makes you wonder, like, is there an ideal home for a tech news outlet
Right.
in this day and age?
Yeah, because the landscape is changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's a question that a lot of publications are grappling with right now.
Yeah.
You know, how do we stay relevant?
Yeah.
How do we stay profitable?
Yeah.
How do we continue to produce high-quality journalism
Yeah.
in this environment?
Yeah. It's a tough question to answer.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so for something completely different,
Okay.
and I would say pretty innovative, Coca-Cola
Coca-Cola.
has unveiled the world's first hydrogen-powered vending machines.
I love that.
I had to read that twice
Hey.
when I saw that headline. It's like, wait,
What?
what?
It's so cool.
So these machines operate entirely without a traditional power outlet.
Yeah.
They run off of these replaceable hydrogen cartridges.
It's incredible.
How cool is that?
That is really cool. And I think it's a great example of pushing the boundaries of everyday technology,
Yeah.
but also keeping sustainability in mind.
Yeah.
Because, you know, vending machines, they use a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so to be able to power them with hydrogen,
Yeah.
which is a clean energy source,
Yeah.
is a really big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like the World Expo in Osaka in 2025 is like the perfect place to debut this, right?
Totally.
I mean, that's kind of the, you know, the place where you see all this
It's the future.
blue future tech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a showcase.
And they're going to install 58 of these machines.
58? That's a lot.
Yeah, with educational displays
Yeah.
about hydrogen power.
So not only are they, you know, showcasing this technology,
Right.
they're also educating people about it.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And I think that's a big part of this whole, you know,
Yeah.
shift toward more sustainable energy sources, right?
Absolutely.
Is educating the public and getting people excited about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's shift gears again.
Okay.
Talk about online security.
Yeah.
Google is taking some serious legal action against a network of scammers
Yeah.
who created over 10,000 fake business listings and Google Maps.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of fake businesses.
So this all started because a locksmith in Texas
Yeah.
complained about someone impersonating his business.
Right.
And, you know, it's just crazy to think about how easily
Yeah.
these fake listings can mislead people.
Absolutely.
You know you're looking for a service.
Right.
You go to Google Maps, you think you're finding a legitimate business.
Yeah.
And it's just not.
It's a scam.
It's a scam. Yeah.
And Google actually removed 12 million fake business profiles just last year,
That's wild.
which is incredible.
Yeah.
So they are taking this very seriously.
Yeah, they have to.
They have to, because it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And it really undermines the trust that people have in Google Maps.
Right.
Which is, you know, a very popular and widely used service.
Yeah. So that's good to hear that they're
Yeah.
cracking down on that.
They are.
All right, let's head over to Europe now.
Okay.
The EU is putting some pressure on Apple
Yeah.
through this thing called the Digital Markets Act.
Right.
It sounds like they're demanding more openness in iOS.
They are.
So what does that mean?
So basically, the EU is saying to Apple, hey, you need to open up some of your core iOS functionalities so that other companies can integrate with your devices.
Yeah.
And they're specifically targeting things like iOS notifications,
Okay.
background app management, and SharePlay.
Okay.
So, you know, things that are really important to the user experience.
Yeah.
And they're saying that, you know, by the end of 2025,
Yeah.
these features need to be accessible to other smartwatches and headphones.
Okay.
So basically, you know, if you have a Samsung smartwatch,
Right.
you should be able to get your iPhone notifications on it,
Interesting.
which you can't do right now.
Yeah.
And so this is a really big deal
Yeah.
because it could potentially change the whole landscape of how we use our devices.
Yeah.
You know, because right now Apple has a very closed ecosystem,
Right.
but the EU is saying, hey, you need to open that up.
Yeah. And this isn't just a suggestion, right?
Yeah.
This is like, you have to do this or.
They could face some pretty hefty fines
Yeah.
if you don't comply.
Yeah.
And I think Apple's probably going to challenge this ruling.
Yeah, this is going to be a long process.
It is.
But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it will.
Okay, staying in Europe.
Okay.
Meta has finally launched its AI chatbot there.
Right.
But with some limitations.
With some caveats, yes.
So what's going on here?
So Meta had to kind of pull back a little bit on their AI chatbot rollout.
Right.
Because they were facing some scrutiny over privacy concerns.
Right.
But now they've relaunched it.
Yeah.
In 41 European countries.
Okay.
Which is a pretty wide reach.
Yeah.
But the functionalities are currently limited to text-based tasks.
Okay.
So things like brainstorming and planning.
Got it.
You can't do things like image generation or editing.
Right.
Yet. Yeah. And importantly, it hasn't been trained on data from EU users.
Okay.
So they'd be very careful about that.
Yeah, it sounds like they're trying to tread lightly.
They are.
To avoid further privacy issues.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for like the average person?
I think it means that AI is definitely becoming more and more integrated into the apps that we use every day.
Yeah.
But it also means that the capabilities of those AI features might be limited.
Right.
In certain regions.
Yeah.
Due to regulatory considerations.
Yeah, makes sense.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right.
It's very much dependent on where you are in the world.
Got it.
And what the local regulations are.
Okay, cool. This next one is for the newsletter creators out there.
Okay.
Ghost, the publishing platform, has connected to the Fediverse.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
I know this feels like a big move toward decentralized content sharing.
It is. And I think this is really exciting for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
So basically what Ghost has done is they've implemented connectivity to the Fediverse via the ActivityPub protocol.
Okay.
And ActivityPub, for those of you who don't know, is basically a decentralized social networking protocol.
Okay.
And so what this means is that now if you're a Ghost user, you can share your newsletters across all these different platforms, like Mastodon and PixelFed.
Got it.
And so it's really giving creators more control over where their content goes and who sees it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because right now a lot of newsletters are kind of stuck on these centralized platforms.
Right.
It's like Substack.
Yeah.
And so this is a way for creators to break free of that.
Yeah.
And really own their own audience.
Yeah, I love that. And they also launched this new inbox feature.
Yeah.
Which is basically like a news aggregator.
Yeah, it's like a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
For all your newsletters and social media feeds.
Yeah, I love it.
Which is really cool.
So, there are still some compatibility hurdles with platforms like Meta's Threads.
Right.
But I think this is a really positive development.
I too.
And it shows that we're moving towards a more distributed web.
Absolutely.
Which I think is a good thing.
I think so too.
Okay, let's talk about some serious hardware power.
Okay.
NVIDIA has just announced what they're calling the world's smallest AI supercomputer.
I know.
It's called the DGX Spark.
It's incredible.
And it's really incredible. It's a desktop form factor.
Yeah.
And it's powered by their new GB10 Grace Blackwell superchip.
Yeah, it's like a little powerhouse.
It's crazy. Yeah. And it can perform up to 1,000 trillion operations per second.
It's insane.
Which is mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing.
So, I mean, this is basically saying that, the kind of computing power that was previously only available in these massive data centers is now available on your desk.
Right in your home office.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing.
And this is just the beginning, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're already working on an even more powerful DGX station.
Right. With the GB300 chip.
Just coming out later this year.
This year, yeah.
So it just shows how fast.
The pace of innovation is incredible.
This stuff is moving.
It's so fast.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of another deep dive.
Wow.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We did.
Everything from online security to social media to AI hardware.
It was a lot.
It's clear that the pace of change is not slowing down.
Not at all.
So as you've been listening to all of this, think about how these different pieces of news connect.
Yeah.
And what it means for, the future of the tech world.
Yeah. What does it mean for you?
Thanks for joining us.
That's all for this week. Remember to follow us on YouTube, Bluesky and X.com for hourly news updates. Stay connected.